Good day from the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow, where at this hour teams of American and Russian flight controllers are working together monitoring the systems on the Soyuz TMA-8 spacecraft as it approaches the International Space Station for its link-up just over an hour from now. The scheduled docking time of 8:19 a.m. Moscow time, which is 10:19 p.m. Central Time on Friday evening in the United States. Aboard the Soyuz TMA-8, Commander Pavel Vinogradov, the commander of the new resident crew that is about to arrive on the International Space Station. Vinogradov seen in the middle of your picture here, joined on his left, on the right side of this picture, by NASA flight engineer and science officer Jeff Williams, and on the left, Brazilian Space Agency astronaut Marcus Pontes, who is flying to the International Space Station under a commercial agreement between the Brazilian Space Agency and the Russian Federal Space Agency, Roscosmos. This crew was launched on Wednesday night U.S. time, Thursday morning Kazakhstan time from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. The crew began its journey at 8:30 a.m. Baikonur time on Thursday morning, which was 8:30 p.m. Houston time on Wednesday night, launching from the same launch pad from which Yuri Gagarin embarked on humankind's first venture into space almost 45 years ago. Since that launch, the Soyuz TMA-8 has gone through a series of rendezvous maneuvers, engine firings to fine-tune and precisely align its path for its docking to the International Space Station. Today, that docking will occur directly to the Zarya module's Earth-facing or nadir port. The Zarya module was cleared a few weeks ago when the resident crew on board the International Space Station, Expedition 12 Commander Bill MacArthur and flight engineer Valery Tokarev, relocated their Soyuz from that Zarya docking port to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module. MacArthur, Tokarev, and Marcus Pontes will be departing in the older Soyuz TMA-7 spacecraft on the evening of April 8th U.S. time in the early morning pre-dawn hours of April 9th in Kazakhstan for a landing on the steppes of Kazakhstan to wrap up a half year in space for MacArthur and Tokarev, and for Marcus Pontes will be 10 days in space. The Zarya module, to which the new Expedition 13 crew is docking just over an hour from now to reconfigure the station to put 3 Russian vehicles at the station for the next 8 days of handover operations. That Zarya module, known as the FGB, was launched on November 20th, 1998, as the first element of the International Space Station to begin the assembly of the complex, which has now grown in size to a house the size of several bedrooms. The Zarya module has now orbited the Earth more than 42,000 times since its launch back on November 20th, 1998. Aboard the International Space Station, the resident crew, Bill MacArthur and Valery Tokarev, were awakened about 2.5 hours ago to begin what for them will be an 18-hour day. Their wake-sleep cycle matching the Soyuz crew, which has been awake slightly longer. Vinogradov, Williams, and Pontes were awakened about 6 hours ago and are now involved in the terminal phase of all of their activities to reach the International Space Station for their docking. At the moment, about 8 kilometers separates the Soyuz from the International Space Station. About 45 minutes ago, Russian flight controllers here at the Russian Mission Control Center, under the direction of Russian Flight Director Konstantin Grigoriev, gave the commands to activate the CORS passive and CORS active systems on both the Zarya module and the Zvezda service module. You're looking at a view live of the Russian Mission Control Center here in Korolyov from a balcony camera, looking down at the control team positions on the front screens, which are showing the various orbital elements of the Soyuz TMA-8 as it closes in for its link-up to the Zarya module just over an hour from now. Working in collaboration with Konstantin Grigoriev, the Russian flight director, here at the Russian Mission Control Center in the Houston Support Group room, which houses the NASA flight control team that operates 7 days a week in conjunction with all of the Russian flight controllers and residents here in Korolyov. The NASA flight director here at the Russian Mission Control Center today is Kwatsi Alabaruho, who is working in concert with Konstantin Grigoriev. half a world away at the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center at Houston. Another team of flight controllers on duty. This is the Orbit 1 team of flight controllers that basically is working the night shift into the early morning of the graveyard shift before they hand over operations to the overnight team. Today's Space Station Flight Control team at the Johnson Space Center is led by Flight Director Sally Davis. She is on the right side of your screen. She is joined on console by a pair of spacecraft communicators. In the middle of your picture is spacecraft communicator Hal Getzelman, who will be talking from time to time when required to the crew on board the International Space Station. And seated to his right on the far left of your screen is Canadian Space Agency astronaut Bob Thirsk, who is an expert in Soyuz spacecraft systems, there to lend a hand if required during the terminal phase of the rendezvous and hatch opening activities that will follow just one orbit later. Again, everything in good shape, all systems working normally aboard the Soyuz TMA-8, a series of rendezvous burns over the past 48 hours, and a series of short impulses, basically thruster firings to further fine-tune the Soyuz's approach to the International Space Station will be forthcoming over the course of the next hour, at which time the Soyuz will arrive in the vicinity of the International Space Station at about 8:07 a.m. Moscow time, which would be about 10:07 p.m. Houston time. That would be about an hour from now. The Soyuz will begin about 3 minutes of station keeping near the Zarya module's nadir or Earth-facing docking port. At that time, telemetry and the alignment of the Soyuz to that docking port on Zarya will be reassessed by the Russian flight control team and Chief Flight Director Vladimir Soloviev here in Korolyov before the green light is given for the automatic final approach to begin. That should begin about 10:10 p.m. Central Time, about 8:10 a.m. Moscow time here on Saturday morning at the Russian Mission Control Center, about 9 minutes then between the final approach and the actual contact and capture of the Soyuz TMA-8 to the Zarya module. Once the docking occurs, the initiation of hooks and latches engaging one another on either side of the docking interface will get underway. That will take a couple of minutes for the two craft, the Soyuz and the International Space Station, to mechanically latch up to one another to form a hard mate. Following that, Pavel Vinogradov aboard the Soyuz TMA-8 and Valery Tokarev aboard the International Space Station will begin to conduct a series of leak checks over the course of the next orbit, or 90 minutes, to ensure a tight seal between the two vehicles prior to the time that the hatches will swing open at about 11:30 p.m. Central Time, about 9:30 a.m. Moscow time on Saturday morning, to enable the two crews to greet one another. MacArthur and Tokarev will be greeting their first and only visitors of their 6 months in space, since they were launched back on October 1st of last year and arrived on the space station on October 3rd. For MacArthur and Tokarev, this is their 182nd day in space, their 180th day aboard the International Space Station. Today, they will be greeting their first and only visitors of their increment for the start of 8 days of handover operations to orient Vinogradov and Williams on all the systems and the location of stored items for what will be their home for the next half year, and to enable Marcus Pontes to be able to commence his commercially sponsored experiment complement that he will be conducting over the course of the next 8 days before Pontes returns to Earth in the pre-dawn hours of April 9th with MacArthur and Tokarev. At this hour, the International Space Station is orbiting at an altitude of 220 statute miles, having just crossed the equator, moving from northwest to southeast in an orbit inclined 51.6 degrees to either side of the equator. In pursuit of the International Space Station, again, the Soyuz TMA-8. In the center seat, clad in the same launch and entry suits that they wore for launch back on Wednesday night, is the commander, Pavel Vinogradov, embarking on his second flight into space. On his left, in the configuration that you see here in this crew portrait, is NASA flight engineer Jeff Williams, and to his right, Marcus Pontes, the Brazilian Space Agency astronaut. Once docking and leak checks have been completed prior to the opening of the hatches, the crew will get out of their launch and entry suits and don more comfortable flight suits for the hatch opening and the initial greeting between the two crews that will be viewed by a trio of dignitaries here at the Russian Mission Control Center. Russian, Brazilian, and American interests are represented here today. NASA represented by Bill Gerstenmaier, the Associate Administrator for Space Operations out of NASA headquarters, as well as Kirk Shireman, the Deputy ISS Program Manager out of the Johnson Space Center, and Mike Coates, the Director of the Johnson Space Center, all on hand here, amongst others, to join in greeting the crews. Once the docking has been accomplished and the hatch opening has been accomplished as well, to provide the two crews with an opportunity to greet one another, almost immediately the newly arrived Expedition 13 crew will begin to transfer items out of the Soyuz TMA-8. That's the newer of the two Soyuzes that will be at the International Space Station at that point. The transfer of the limited amount of cargo being carried up on the Soyuz will be moved into the International Space Station, after which all of the Soyuz systems will be deactivated. That will occur just after midnight Central Time. The crews will have an opportunity to begin drying out their spacesuits, and the custom-made Soyuz seedliner that is Marcus Pontes's aboard the TMA-8 will be transferred over to the older Soyuz TMA-7 spacecraft, which will be Pontes's ride home in the pre-dawn hours of April 9th. That custom-made Soyuz seedliner will be installed in the right seat of the older Soyuz TMA-7 that is docked to the aft port of the Zvezda service module. As the International Space Station orbits at an altitude of 220 miles over the Pacific Ocean, you're looking at live downlink television from the camera on the exterior of the Destiny Laboratory of the International Space Station, with the external stowage platform and the Quest airlock from which U.S. spacewalks are conducted, very prominent in the field of view.
В 6:11:15 было включение СКД, вместо 6:08:17. Почти 3 минуты задержались.
Ну, мы как бы вас предупреждали, что может быть разница там в 1-2 минуты.
Мы сейчас вот так вот. Мы здесь прошли 3 минуты позже и выдали скорость меньше. То есть она, в принципе...
Very prominent in the field of view from this camera, which is on the outboard side of the Port 1 or P1 truss of the International Space Station, is the Progress 20 cargo ship that arrived at the station recently to deliver food, fuel, and supplies for the crew on board the International Space Station. You can also see one of the radiators from the P1 truss that is prominently deployed Also, you're looking at one of the large solar arrays on the Russian segment of the International Space Station. That Progress craft, by the way, that you're seeing now in the upper right-hand portion of your screen now as that camera is zooming in, that Progress is docked to the Pirs docking compartment, which serves a dual purpose for arriving Russian vehicles as well as an airlock for Russian-based spacewalks. The camera now panning just beyond the solar array of the Soyuz TMA-7 spacecraft that was relocated recently within the last 2 weeks by MacArthur and Tokarev from the Zarya module to the aft port of the Zvezda service module living quarters to open up the Zarya module for today's arrival of the TMA-8 spacecraft carrying the new resident crew, Pavel Vinogradov and Jeff Williams, along with Brazilian Space Agency astronaut Marcus Pontes. We are just over an hour away from the scheduled time of docking at 10:19 p.m. Central Time, 8:19 a.m. Moscow time here on Saturday morning at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov.
Принято. Принято.
Если надо вдруг будет перейти в ручной режим, нам надо будет, если вы перейдете, скажете нам надо будет выдать текущее положение команды на станции, поскольку станция находится в войсках.
Принято.
Ну вот, вроде у меня все.
As mentioned earlier, the crew aboard the Soyuz TMA-8 without a lot of room in which to move around. It's fairly cramped quarters. They will be glad to arrive on board the International Space Station and have an opportunity to stretch their legs a bit. As we mentioned earlier, their journey began not quite 48 hours ago with their launch from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. It was a very cold but clear morning in the Central Asian steppe as Williams, Vinogradov, and Pontes boarded their spacecraft before dawn. At exactly 8:30 a.m. Baikonur time, the command was given for the gantry swing arms to back away, and the launch began. Here you see the final seconds and the final swing arm backing away as the command was given for main engine start. The engines built up to their full throttle, and exactly 8:30 and 20 seconds a.m., the half-year journey of Pavel Vinogradov and Jeff Williams got underway at liftoff. The Soyuz rocket carrying the three crew members on board lifted off very quickly, a good roll and pitch program as it traveled on its azimuth, aiming for a precise cutoff target in space. The journey from launch pad to orbit for the Soyuz took about 9 minutes. The crew reported a very smooth ride with Vinogradov monitoring the controls in the center seat of the Soyuz, Jeff Williams to his right, Marcus Pontes to his left, to his right, with Jeff Williams seated in the left seat as the flight engineer for ASCENT, as he will be for today's docking to the International Space Station. About 2 minutes after launch, the first stage shut down and separated. The strap-on liquid fuel boosters mounted on the side of the first stage also backed away. You can see as the spacecraft passed through its period of maximum dynamic pressure, providing a vaporized contrail as it passed out of the upper reaches of the atmosphere. All of the Soyuz booster systems operated flawlessly, sending Vinogradov, Williams, and Pontes on their 2-day trek to the International Space Station.
Так, Сукарата. Наблюдаю яркую звездочку. Примерно градус ниже перекрестия и полградуса правее.
Принято ниже правее. Вы смотрите на линзовом экране или на рассеивающем?
Back here in the Russian Mission Control Center, communications has been established in a link between the Soyuz TMA-8 and the crew on board the International Space Station. just about 20 minutes from now, the television, the external TV, the black and white television on the outside of the Soyuz spacecraft will be activated at a range of about 8 kilometers. That will then be patched through the station's Ku-band communication system through the tracking and data relay satellite system to provide Russian flight controllers here in Korolyov an early view of the telemetry from the Soyuz, as well as a view of the International Space Station when it passes within range of the station. That will provide the ability of the Russian flight controllers to see that telemetry prior to the Soyuz spacecraft passing within range of Russian ground stations. That will take place about 14 minutes before the docking itself. At the International Space Station Flight Control Room in Houston, the visiting vehicle officer reports to Flight Director Sally Davis that the Soyuz is now 6 kilometers away from the International Space Station on a precise track, moving right down the orbital highway for its link up to the Zarya module. Just under an hour from now, about 58 minutes from now, docking scheduled at 10:19 p.m. Central Time, 8:19 a.m. Moscow time, here on a Saturday morning. Again, when it passes within the close vicinity of the International Space Station, the Soyuz will be passing from the rear of the Zvezda service module and will conduct a fly-around to position itself in an interim point down the longitudinal axis of the Russian segment of the station before the station-keeping period of about 2.5 minutes gets underway. Following approval from the Russian flight control team, the Soyuz then will move again laterally down that longitudinal axis within alignment about 120 meters away from the Zarya module's Earth-facing docking port, and Pavel Vinogradov will allow the automated computers on board the Soyuz to do the rest. He is standing by, of course, ready to take over manual control of the flying of the Soyuz should that become necessary. But this rendezvous approach is guided by the Core's automated docking system on the Soyuz. It's basically a radio beacon arrangement that provides signals to the passive Core's antennas on both the Zarya module and the Zvezda service module, providing navigational updates for the Soyuz computer so it knows exactly where it is in precise alignment to that docking port. At the time of contact and capture, the Soyuz should be closing in at a glacial rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second for a very gentle bump as the two spacecraft come in contact with one another, enabling the hooks and latches to engage, to provide a hard mate, a firm handshake between the two spacecraft, and then subsequently, after that, the actual leak checks that will be conducted between Vinogradov on board the Soyuz and Valery Tokarev on the Russian segment of the International Space Station inside the Zarya module itself. It is a very busy day for the two crews once they have had an opportunity to greet one another following hatch opening. Again, the transferring of cargo. There will be a safety briefing conducted by Bill MacArthur, the resident commander for Expedition 12 on board the International Space Station, in which he will familiarize the newly arrived crew of Vinogradov, Williams, and Pontes with the various emergency evacuation routes and the location of key systems on board the station so that they receive a quick debrief, which is commonplace for all newly arriving crews on board the International Space Station. the spacesuits and the gloves that the new crew have been wearing from time to time during their 2-day transit from Baikonur to the International Space Station will be hung out to dry, so to speak, so that they are ready to be used if necessary in the days or weeks ahead in the event of an unplanned evacuation or departure from the International Space Station for the new crew. Also, Marcus Pontes will be actually activating some of the experiments that are on board the Russian segment of the International Space Station that were delivered on the Progress 20 cargo ship that is just out of the field of view in your picture. In the upper right-hand corner is the Piers docking compartment, and as you see the camera panning up, you can see the forward portion of the Progress 20 cargo ship that delivered all of Pontes' experiment hardware a couple of months ago. That hardware was set up by Valery Tokarev and is ready to be used by Pontes over the course of the next 8 days. All quiet here in the Russian Mission Control Center, everything going by the book as the Soyuz closes in for its docking to the International Space Station, now less than 3 kilometers away from the complex, closing at a rate of about 40 meters per second at the moment. The closure rate is proper. There will be a series of braking maneuvers, essentially, to slow down the Progress's rate of closure to the International Space Station, but all systems on both the Soyuz and the station operating to perfection at this hour as the 2 craft pass over the South Pacific. You can see in this view from a variety of cameras on the International Space Station, this from the external camera on the Destiny laboratory of the International Space Station. The other view you just saw was from the outboard camera on the starboard or S1 truss you're looking at right now, showing on the left side of your screen the Quest airlock from which U.S. spacewalks are conducted at the International Space Station. And toward the right of your screen, in darkness, is the Progress 20 cargo ship docked to the Piers docking compartment, the resupply ship that most recently arrived at the International Space Station, bringing food, fuel, and supplies for the Expedition 12 crew, Marcus Pontes' Brazilian-sponsored experiments that he will conduct over the course of the next 8 days, while the expedition crews are in handover activities with one another, and all of some of the early clothing and hardware that also will be worn by the Expedition 13 crew, Pavel Vinogradov and Jeff Williams. The 5 crew members, once they are joined together on board the International Space Station, they have a very busy 8 days that lie ahead. Not only the handover between the Expedition 12 and 13 crews, there will be Space Station robotic arm proficiency training for Vinogradov and Williams by Bill MacArthur. Once they have settled in, there is a familiarization program so that Vinogradov and Williams understand the location of all the stowed items in both the Russian and U.S. segments of the station. They will also have an opportunity to conduct some training on the spacesuits, both the U.S. and Russian spacesuits, become familiarized with that hardware. Near the end of their 8 days, the returning crew of MacArthur, Tokarev, and Marcus Pontes will spend several hours on one of the days later in the week on descent and entry training as they prepare for their Soyuz return to Earth in the Soyuz TMA-7 spacecraft. On Monday night, Bill MacArthur and Jeff Williams will spend the night in the Quest airlock conducting what is known as a camp-out. This is a test of procedures to purge nitrogen from their bloodstreams, the same procedures that will be used starting with the STS-115 mission later this year to minimize the amount of time spacewalkers require to purge nitrogen out of their bloodstreams prior to the start of U.S.-based spacewalks out of the Quest airlock. They essentially will isolate themselves in the Quest from Vinogradov, Tokarev, and Pontes, who will run the station's systems during that overnight period on Monday night into Tuesday morning. They will depressurize the Quest airlock down to 10.2 pounds per square inch from its normal 14.7 pounds per square inch, and essentially spend the night in what is actually a camp-out, isolated from the rest of their crew members. MacArthur and Williams then will repressurize the Quest airlock on Tuesday morning after they wake up, open up the hatches, and resume their handover activities with the rest of their crew on board. Again, this camp-out procedure on Monday night designed to test procedures that will become commonplace starting with the spacewalks planned for the STS-115 mission later this year to deliver to the International Space Station the 3rd and 4th segments of the port truss of the complex as expansion of assembly is due to resume later this year.
Okay. Роман 15. Подожди-ка, что нам сказали, Роман 17, передачи КСМ, да. Цукара там.
Карата, наблюдай.
MCC Karats, we can see the display right now. This is MCC.
Aboard the Soyuz, Pavel Vinogradov, the Expedition 13 commander, is currently testing television systems as well as communication systems at a range of about 17 kilometers. The Soyuz approaching now at a slightly reduced rate of about 22 meters per second. Again, right on the marks, according to the Russian ballistics experts here at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow.
Inaudible.
The International Space Station and the Soyuz TMA-8 now approaching Tierra del Fuego off the southern coast of the continent of South America, soon to begin a southwest to northeasterly trek up the east coast of South America that will take Marcus Pontes just to the east of Rio de Janeiro and to the east of the capital of Brazil, Brasilia, as he crosses the equator with his crewmates in pursuit of the International Space Station and for a scheduled docking just 43 minutes from now.
MCC, how do you copy, Karats? We read you. 52.5 meters. SKD 3458 activation, escalator deactivation. Copy.
Второй 40-й, 19-м.
24019.
Захват.
Acquisition. 63614. Acquisition. Copy.
Half a world away from where the Russian flight control team is supervising the Soyuz's approach to the International Space Station at the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston. The team of flight controllers on duty on a Friday night, monitoring the systems on board the station, again led by Flight Director Sally Davis on the right side of your screen. She is wrapping up 6 months as the lead flight director for Expedition 12 before she hands over that responsibility to Kathy Kerner, who will be the lead flight director for Expedition 13.
Karatz, this is MCC, please respond. Go ahead, MCC. You're breaking up. How do you read us, Karatz? Loud and clear, how us? Yes, loud and clear.
Отработали 6 секунд, 2,6 метра.
Была дополнительная коррекция, но вперед пока удобно.
Принято.
As the Soyuz moves into close proximity of the International Space Station, we are expecting television views from the Soyuz itself. We should be acquiring television from the Soyuz over Russian ground stations at about 7 minutes after the hour, about 12 minutes before the docking itself. We also should be receiving television through the U.S. KU-band communication system from exterior cameras on both the starboard and port trusses of the complex before the Soyuz passes within range of the Russian ground station communications network.
You confirm on KU you were getting a video downlink?
Bill, on Space to Ground 1, we were receiving that video just fine, and we've lost KU at the moment, but we expect to get it back shortly.
I can see that. I just wanted to confirm that, in fact, you had video when you did have KU. Thank you.
With a variety of communication systems in play, Commander Bill MacArthur on board the International Space Station verifying when he might expect to see video routed through his system on board the complex from the Soyuz spacecraft. Again, we're about 12 minutes away from acquiring additional television through the U.S. KU-band communication system through the tracking and data relay satellite system.
Yes. That's strange. Why is it doing that? That's strange. Never mind. Karatz, inaudible, more detailed information. Enter 00, inaudible. Yes, this is display 44, range 11,400, rate 913, approaching. The cruise prediction is almost close to what we need. OS 1171001.
Впервые у вас режим 2.0?
Да, конечно, у нас на впервые сейчас 2.0.
Ten kilometers now separates the Soyuz from the International Space Station. Its closure rate down to about 8 meters per second. That is all within the normal parameters, right on the money. According to the Russian flight controllers here at the Russian Mission Control Center, everything going very smoothly. Not much conversation on the space-to-ground loops or on the VHF circuits from the Soyuz spacecraft. We won't hear additional communications from the Soyuz directly until they pass within range of the Russian ground stations a short time from now. But everything is shaping up for an on-time docking just about 36 minutes from now as the new residents soon to arrive at their new home in space, Pavel Vinogradov and Jeff Williams, along with Brazilian Space Agency astronaut Marcus Pontes, prepare for their link-up to the Earth-facing docking port of the Zarya module, the first element of the International Space Station launched back on November 20th, 1998.
400 метров дальность, 8:47 скорость на сближение, и скорость медленно падает.
The current plans for Expedition 13 call for Vinogradov and Williams to move their Soyuz TMA-8 spacecraft from the docking port on the Earth-facing or nadir side of the Zarya module, to which it will link up to a short time from now. That relocation of the new Soyuz is expected to take place in the August time frame, once again duplicating what Bill MacArthur and Valery Tokarev did not quite 2 weeks ago when they moved their older Soyuz TMA-7 spacecraft from Zarya to the aft port of the Zvezda service module. This is typically done to provide the appropriate location, opening up the Zarya module for the direct arrival of a new crew to the International Space Station, thus creating more efficiencies for the first few weeks of the new increment for the new expedition, in this case for Pavel Vinogradov and Jeff Williams.
Okay. Sure.
Okay, good. I can see a little star in the vicinity of the cross-section of the targeting lines, but it's kind of difficult to understand because it's still dark, but it's kind of blinking, like the station lights. Correct, inaudible, yes, there is. Display 44, it's display 44. On 43 you can see inaudible. Copy. And the burns are small, X1 1.9, VY 319 051 VS. Copy.
МКС, по Москве, для Валеры. Дил, если ты меня слышишь в СГ-1, попроси, пожалуйста, Валеру, чтобы он мне в СГ-1 ответил. Слышим, Влад прилетит. Есть процедуру, которую надо обсудить с ним.
Дальность 8000.
8000, 9.87 range rate. Copy.
This is Mission Control Korolov. Everything continues to proceed smoothly for the expected docking of the new Expedition 13 crew and Brazilian astronaut Marcus Pontes just 31 minutes from now. Just 7 kilometers separating the two spacecraft as the Soyuz approaches the point where it would begin its fly-around of the International Space Station. That's expected to get underway about 12 minutes from now. Again, everything in order as the crew on board the station, Bill MacArthur and Valery Tokarev, are standing by in the Russian segment monitoring systems. They're prepared to activate a variety of television systems. They're armed also with cameras to capture the approach of the Soyuz for later downlink. We should again be receiving television views from both the outboard cameras on the starboard and port trusses of the International Space Station, along with television views when we pass over Russian ground stations from the Soyuz itself.
Cross-section, half a degree.
We're about 18 minutes away from passing within Russian ground station coverage, and again at that point the first views from the Soyuz of the International Space Station should be available. This entire approach being automatically guided by onboard computers on the Soyuz. Again, the Soyuz providing telemetry through the automated Core's rendezvous system, a radio beacon navigational system that bounces signals towards the International Space Station to both the Zarya module and the Zvezda service module, and receives in return navigational data that provides the proper path for the onboard computers to update themselves so that the Soyuz is precisely aligned for its docking to the Earth-facing port of the Zarya module. The International Space Station and the Soyuz now approaching the equator, moving from southwest to northeast at an altitude of 220 statute miles, soon to cross the west coast of Africa. This orbit will carry the two spacecraft over Morocco and Libya and over the Mediterranean.
111 range rate, copying.
После перевыбора формата
and 640 inaudible. And
Here in the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, a suburb of Moscow, the Russian flight controllers are on duty, as you can see in this view from the balcony that overlooks the vast Russian flight control room. All of the screens are up and running. Delegations from NASA, from the Russian side, and from the Brazilian Space Agency are on hand to watch the arrival of the Expedition 13 crew, Pavel Vinogradov and Jeff Williams, along with their Brazilian crewmate, Marcus Pontes, who is flying a short-duration 10-day mission under a commercial agreement between the Brazilian Space Agency and the Russian Federal Space Agency.
Дальность 5200, скорость.
1200, 11.2, range rate. Copy.
With just 4 kilometers now separating the Soyuz TMA-8 and the International Space Station, we're about 7 minutes away from initiating the fly-around by Pavel Vinogradov as he aligns the Soyuz from the position directly behind the companion Soyuz TMA-7 spacecraft that has made it to the aft port of the Zvezda Service Module living quarters at the far end of the Russian segment of the complex to a point directly facing the Zarya facing Nadir docking port of the Zarya module, where a period of about 2 minutes or so of station keeping will get underway. That period is variable. It's not fixed. If the Russian flight controllers like what they see in terms of the precise alignment of the Soyuz forward docking probe to the Zarya module, that period of station keeping can be terminated earlier, and Vinogradov can be given the go to proceed on for docking.
Meters, 10.4 range rate. And it's decreasing, 1035, copy 1032. Inaudible. Yes, the video is of poor quality. I could give you a better picture, but I have no cable. Because Mark has an awesome camera here. And now the picture seems to be fine. Okay. Yes, and now I can see the station very clearly. It's practically in the center of the intersecting lines, several minutes above and to the left, 652.26.
You're now seeing a view from the external camera on the Soyuz TMA-8 spacecraft. This is being relayed through the tracking and data relay satellite through the U.S. Ku-band communication system on the International Space Station. In the lower left-hand corner, you see those numbers, 03, 313. That is the actual distance, the range, about 3.2 kilometers separating the Soyuz from the International Space Station, and the figure below that, 8, now 7.9793, that's the rate of closure at about less than 8 meters per second. The proper speed the Soyuz is now traveling for its initiation of a fly-around that will ultimately lead to the precise alignment of the Soyuz to the Zarya module's Earth-facing docking port and the link-up between the two vehicles, with docking scheduled about 23.5 minutes from now.
Copy. 4 meters, 5 meters,
This telemetry that's being monitored by the Russian flight controllers showing that the Soyuz has begun its braking as it approaches the near vicinity of the International Space Station. This view from the starboard 1 camera, the S1 outboard camera that you saw a moment ago, shows the position of the Progress 20 cargo ship, and there you see it on the right side of your screen, the Quest airlock.
Okay. Now
the docking port for the Soyuz TMA-8 will be at the near earthward-facing docking port of the Zarya module, right next to the 20 Progress spacecraft. Once Vinogradov eases the Soyuz in and hooks and latches engage, 3 Russian vehicles will be at the International Space Station, one at Zarya, one at Pirs, and one at the aft end of the Zvezda service module.
We can see the station in the center of the intersecting lines. Yes, copy. 2,507 range rate.
At this point, no maneuvers being conducted by the Soyuz. Now just 2.5 kilometers away from its approach to the International Space Station, with docking right on track. All of the Soyuz systems operating to perfection to this point. A smooth ride so far for Vinogradov, Williams, and Pontes as they near their orbital outpost.
Дальность
2,200. 677 approaching.
We should be passing within range of Russian ground stations in about 10 minutes, and there's a view from the external cameras of the International Space Station of the Soyuz TMA-8, now just 2 kilometers away. As the Soyuz approaches even closer, you'll be seeing jet thruster firings from the Soyuz, again, all governed by automated computers on the Soyuz, as it fine-tunes its impulses to precisely align itself with the docking port of the Zarya module, or the FGB, as it is known in the Russian parlance.
дальность
1900, 654 range rate.
Closing at a rate of about 6.5 meters per second. Soyuz now just 1.5 kilometers away.
If it's more convenient for you,
we're about a minute away from initiating the fly-around by Pavel Vinogradov to precisely align the Soyuz with the Zarya module's Earth-facing docking port.
I can pretty much go ahead and use the SCASO. You need 43. I'll stick to 43 for now. Selection B1, B2. Okay, very good. Excellent. B1, B2. Very good. Inaudible. Copy. I can see the station practically in the center. Yes, we can see the station as well. Okay. 71001, yes, available. It's a big station, beautiful. Now it's going to be the sunrise and we're going to be able to see it. Inaudible.
Once again, in this view from the external camera on the Soyuz TMA-8, you can see the faint outline and darkness of the structure of the International Space Station. The Soyuz 1.2 kilometers away, approaching now at a descending rate of about 5.5 meters per second, everything on track for an on-time docking.
5.78 approaching. Okay, depot activation for plus X plus Z. Copy.
Слышь, как работает?
Can you hear depot? Yes, I can.
МКС по мосту для Валеры. Валера, выйди, пожалуйста, в СГ-1.
Valery, please contact us on SG1. We would like to talk to you. Very good, will do.
Дальность
950, 3.7, range rate. Copy. We're watching.
Так, по плюс.
Plus Z,
Плюс.
plus X.
Less than a kilometer away now, the Soyuz TMA-8, again in this view from its external cameras showing the International Space Station. The two craft are still in darkness as they traverse past the equator over Africa en route for an expected link-up over China near the Mongolian, Russian, and Kazakh borders about 17 minutes from now. Everything going by the book. No issues being worked by either the flight control team here in Korolyov or the NASA flight control team at the International Space Station flight control room in Houston.
I guess Valery has turned it on, yes. Beautiful. It's kind of dark, but it's beautiful.
The fly-around has now begun as the Soyuz TMA-8 approaches for its link-up to the International Space Station. Again, the Soyuz moving from a position directly behind the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module to a point directly above and looking towards the docking port of the Zarya module.
I see retrograde burn.
На период, пока мы в тени находимся. Принят.
Так, слушаю я тебя слабо. Давай говори еще раз, это я не слышу.
Просьба, у нас большой...
475 rate 208.
Пока мы в тени, чтобы не вывалить.
450.
Хорошо, прямо сейчас, Валер.
2-1.
Я
включаю все источники тогда, давай. Которые можно.
Которые можно, да, правильно.
По свету и так далее. Хорошо, я понял.
Давай, давай.
Russian flight controllers asking Valery Tokarev, the Expedition 12 flight engineer, to turn off equipment not needed for the docking phase of today's activities, noting a slightly higher power consumption than is usually the case for this point of a rendezvous. Now the International Space Station comes clearly into view from the external camera on the Soyuz TMA-8. In the upper left-hand quadrant of this engineering view from the external camera, you can see at the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module, that's the Soyuz TMA-7 spacecraft, the Expedition 12's ride home along with Marcus Pontes in the pre-dawn hours of April 9th. Slightly further down the longitudinal axis of the International Space Station's Russian segment is the Progress 20 supply craft that has made it to the Pirs docking compartment. Again, this fly-around is designed to precisely align the forward docking probe on the new Soyuz TMA-8 carrying Vinogradov, Williams, and Pontes to the Earth-facing or nadir docking port of the Zarya module, to which it is expected to link up about 16 minutes from now.
Are we in some...
Valery should be able to see us now. Pasha, I've been seeing you for a while. Oh yeah? Why do you not say anything then? Like a guerrilla warfighter would not give up a word. Yes, I just didn't want to interfere with your work, guys. Okay, well, we'll continue then.
Bill, we're working the power issues right now. We're good on our side, and we're talking to the Russians about theirs.
Okay, kind of back to the short question. Do we have a potential problem?
A range 280 meters.
I'm checking for you, Bill.
Да, красота, конечно.
Beautiful.
Marcus,
we should have left you behind in the BO because the view would be gorgeous from there.
Сказочное зрелище.
Like a fairy tale.
Дальность 210.
210 and...
Flight controllers assessing power consumption on board the International Space Station. No concerns on the U.S. side. Slightly higher power usage being detected on the Russian side. Nothing that would impede a smooth docking for the Soyuz TMA-8. Bill MacArthur about to receive an update from flight controllers at the International Space Station Flight Control Room in Houston.
Так, смотрим точно на ГРовские антенны.
We are looking at the GR antennas.
160 метров.
160 meters retrograde burn.
And Bill, we're looking good on our power on our side. We're showing the Russians are a little below the prediction, and that's why they're asking you to power down here to see if we can ship them some more power.
170 meters.
Is there any need for us to power down anything on the U.S. segment?
Negative, Bill.
Thank you.
Spacecraft communicator Hal Getzelman informing Bill MacArthur that there's no need for concern, that the power usage on the U.S. side in good shape. Now you're seeing views from the external cameras on the International Space Station of the thruster firings of the Soyuz TMA-8 carrying Expedition 13 Commander Pavel Vinogradov, Flight Engineer Jeff Williams, and Brazilian Space Agency astronaut Marcus Pontes.
I see.
They're now beginning a slow rotation to precisely align the forward docking probe on the Soyuz TMA-8 in the correct configuration to align it with the docking port of the Zarya module, about 160 meters separating the two spacecraft. The Soyuz will be going into a period of a couple of minutes of station keeping here, just a short time from now, to allow the Russian flight control team to further assess the alignment between the Soyuz and Zarya before the go is given for Pavel Vinogradov and the automated computers on the Soyuz to complete the final few meters for contact and capture.
Дальность 160.
Range 186 meters.
Заскок. Принято.
We copy.
Принято. Так, СП выйдем.
What do you see?
You're seeing television views from both the Soyuz TMA-8 and the International Space Station. This view from the Soyuz itself, as the Soyuz is now in a period of station keeping. Automated computers will, after about a 2-minute period, then resume the final approach for contact and capture to the Earth-facing or nadir docking port of the Zarya module. Everything proceeding in good fashion. The discussion a few moments ago about power consumption on the Russian side, no source for concern. We are now within range of Russian ground stations as well to receive the picture from the Soyuz spacecraft as soon as we pass out of range of the tracking and data relay satellite system. And this picture that you're seeing being relayed from the U.S. Ku-band communication system to Russian flight controllers here at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov. Again, the Soyuz is currently station keeping. Soon to resume its final approach for docking to the Zarya module to bring new residents to the International Space Station along with a Brazilian Space Agency crewmate. This view from the external cameras on the International Space Station showing the thrusters firing on the Soyuz TMA-8 to maintain a period of station keeping. Everything is proceeding in good shape. In Houston, Flight Director Sally Davis is talking to her Russian counterpart, Konstantin Grigoriev, here at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov, receiving updates on the power consumption on the Russian segment. Grigoriev indicating that there is no source for concern. Everything in good shape, as we are just now minutes away from the arrival of 3 additional crew members on board the orbital outpost.
Karate? Okay, we are station keeping within the code. Yes, what's happening? With the final approach thrusters, you need to activate the command. In work. I am inputting 31 000 40 7 13. I've keyed that in. Copy. Do I get a go to send the command? Yes, you have our go. In work. 33 000 47 13. I've keyed that in, and I confirm. 130 meters, 05 for approach. We copy.
The Soyuz now has begun its final approach to the International Space Station. You can see in the center of the crosshairs on this view from the external camera on the Soyuz, that is the nadir or earthward-facing docking port of the Zarya module, the Zarya being the first element of the International Space Station launched back on November 20th, 1998, to begin the construction of the International Complex. Now you're seeing the Soyuz moving ever so slowly in for its expected docking. Docking expected about 6 minutes from now, possibly a minute or two earlier, depending on how comfortable the Russian flight controllers are with the rate of approach, which at the moment is right on the money.
Station Houston, Space to Ground 1 for Bill and power.
We are observing the target, and practically within the crosshairs there is some movement relative to yaw and roll, more for yaw than for the roll. We are moving directly towards.
As you see the Soyuz drift back and forth, that is the function of the core's automated docking system on the Soyuz that is feeding radio beacon and navigational information back into the Soyuz computers to precisely align the forward docking probe with the Zarya module itself. About 60 meters separating the Soyuz from Zarya. The approach going very smoothly, no issues being worked by the flight control teams.
50 meters and 0.34 for the approach rate. Ground copies? The target is a little bit lower than we need to, and to the right.
Yes, SSVP.
And I have SSVP.
40 meters separating Soyuz from its destination on the International Space Station, closing at a rate of about 0.2 of a meter per second. It is a perfect approach by the TMA-8 for its link up to the International Space Station. Now switching to a wide view, you can see a good view of the International Space Station. On the far upper right-hand corner is the Canadarm2, the Canadian-built station robotic arm that has made it to the Destiny laboratory of the International Space Station. On the far lower left-hand corner of your screen, down at the lower end of the Russian segment of the station, is the older Soyuz TMA-7 spacecraft that will be the ride home on the early morning of April 9th, Kazakhstan time, April 8th, U.S. time, for Bill MacArthur, Valery Tokarev, and Brazilian astronaut Marcus Pontes. Again, this view of Russian ground stations from the external camera on the Soyuz vehicle. We've passed out of range of the tracking and data relay satellite system network, so we are not receiving views from the external cameras on the International Space Station through the U.S. communication system on the complex. The recorders on board the station, however, are capturing those views for replay as soon as we do reacquire a television downlink capability through the U.S. system. Just 36 meters separating the Soyuz from the Zarya module docking port, again closing at a rate of about 0.2 of a meter per second. The solar arrays on both the U.S. and Russian segments of the International Space Station were feathered some time ago. Feathering the arrays puts them in an edge-on configuration to prevent any inadvertent pluming of those delicate arrays by the jet thruster firings on the Soyuz vehicle as it fine-tunes its final few feet of approach for link-up to the Zarya module. Flight Director Konstantin Grigoriev reports everything is normal. One final slight rotation, updating the computers on the Soyuz, precisely aligned now with the Zarya docking port just 19 meters away, closing at a rate of 0.1 of a meter per second.
Range is approximately 15 or 12 meters. We copy. Target is 1 degree to the right and half a degree higher.
Pavel Vinogradov reports a good approach.
I see a roll.
14 meters separating the two spacecraft. Good closure rate. 10 meters now, according to the visiting vehicle officer in Mission Control in Houston.
Target is 1 degree to the right.
Now 7 meters separating the two spacecraft. Flight controllers standing by for contact and capture of the International Space Station.
1 degree to the right, 1 degree lower. We copy. Rate 017. Standing by for contact.
Docking confirmed.
Mechanical capture. Okay, well, congratulations to everyone. This is the final stop for our train. The train
docking confirmed at 8:19 a.m. Moscow time, 10:19 p.m. Houston time on Friday night. Right on the money, right on time, as the two craft passed over China near the Russian, Kazakh, and Mongolian borders. New residents have arrived at the International Space Station.
Karate, this is MTC. Yes. Go ahead. You can go ahead and deactivate the display. In work.
And there's our first view through the Port 1 camera, the outboard camera on the port truss of the International Space Station. In the middle of your screen is the newly arrived Soyuz TMA-8 spacecraft. And on the left side of your screen, the Progress 20 cargo ship that arrived recently to deliver supplies to the station. Again, you're looking at the new Soyuz TMA-8 with Pavel Vinogradov, Jeff Williams, and Marcus Pontes aboard, having successfully docked to the nadir earthward-facing docking port of the Zarya module on time just a minute and a half ago at 8:19 a.m. Moscow time, 10:19 p.m. Central Time on Friday night.
Yes, now the next information. You're breaking up. Say again. Before opening the BOSU hatch, how copy? Lyosha, I don't understand what you're saying. Okay, stand by a minute. How do you hear me now? Karate? Karate, this is MCC. Please respond. Yes, go ahead. How do you hear me? I hear you with interferences. Okay, I copy. Stand by one.
Так, давление листа наше.
785.
What's the pressure in the Assam? 785. I copy. We want one of you guys to always be ready for communication. So if you need to use an extension cable, go ahead and do that. Yes, we have the extension cable ready. Now you need to issue the D13 command. In work. We have sent the command D13. Copy that. Now, how do you hear me now? Again, with interferences, but better than last time. And now we have you loud and clear. Okay, continue working per the timeline. Yes.
With the new residents of the International Space Station safely docked, the initiation of hooks and latches to form a hard mate between the two vehicles now underway. You're looking at a replay of the final moments of the approach of the Soyuz TMA-8 for its docking that occurred at 10:19 p.m. Central Time as the Soyuz TMA-8 and the International Space Station flew over China near the Kazakh, Russian, and Mongolian borders. Again, you're looking at a replay from external cameras on the International Space Station recorded just a few moments ago of the final approach of the Soyuz for its docking to the Earth-facing or nadir docking port of the Zarya module, placing 3 Russian vehicles at the international outpost.
144, 198, 195, 88. For some reason, we have the different propellant data, but I think it's okay. What's happening with the propellant there, guys? Well, Jeff and I have different readings on our infos. My reading is 590, his is 588.
Ждем F-13.
Okay, now we're waiting for the D-13.
Beautiful. I take it.
КС Москвы, СГ-1 для Валера.
This is Mission Control Korolyov as we watch this videotape replay of the final moments of the approach of the Soyuz TMA-8 for its docking that occurred about 6 minutes ago at 10:19 p.m. Central Time. One programming note, we will be switching upstairs here in the Russian Mission Control Center shortly for a post-docking news conference that will be held involving several officials from the Russian, Brazilian, and American delegations here this morning, Saturday morning Moscow time. Involved will be Nikolai Moiseev, who is the deputy head of the Russian Federal Space Agency, Alex Krasnov, the head of piloted programs for the Russian Federal Space Agency, Nikolai Sevastianov, the chief designer for RSC Energia, Bill Gerstenmaier, who's NASA's associate administrator for space operations, Kirk Shireman, the deputy ISS program manager, and Raimundo Musier of the Brazilian Space Agency. We're going to be switching off of this live picture of the newly arrived Soyuz TMA-8 at the Nadir docking port of the Zarya module to go to our post-docking news conference, which should be getting underway a short time from now. Just one time frame note for you. After the completion of the news conference, we are continuing our live coverage of the arrival of the Expedition 13 crew and Brazilian astronaut Marcus Pontes to the International Space Station, an on-time docking that occurred at 8:19 a.m. Moscow time just a few minutes ago, 10:09 p.m. Central Time in the United States on Friday night. Again, coming up, the post-docking news conference, followed about an hour or so from now by the hatch opening and the greetings between the newly arrived Expedition 13 crew and Marcus Pontes and the resident Expedition 12 crew on board the International Space Station.
Go ahead, Bill.
Al, to give you guys a heads up, as soon as we deconfigure the Russian video, I'm going to exit.
And again, this videotape replay showing the final moments and the actual link-up of the Soyuz to the International Space Station. There you see the TMA-8 as it linked up, initiating the capture of hooks and latches on both sides of the docking interface. Again, coming up momentarily, the post-docking news conference from here at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow. This is Mission Control Korolyov.
Wilco.
Москвы в СГ-1.
Валер, слышно нас в СГ-1?
Да, но ты же имей в виду, что я только с Лэбом могу разговаривать в СГ-1.
Валер, сознательно на это идем. Ну, первое, что поздравляю вас с прибытием смены. Самое главное, все штатно, аккуратно получилось.
session using U.S. assets. You need to set up for the TV session and there are references to our procedures. Valery, this setup between 525 and 540, this is not for the TV session that's immediately after the setup using U.S. assets. This is the setup that you're going to have in orbit 4 out of the service module using our assets. For you to be able to verify the camera again and the setup, the frame setup. 525 is the live setup. That is correct. Therefore, you need to go and take a look in the service module because this is going to be a power, a color downlink. There will be a short break to collect the antigen and the conjugation experiment, and then right away you have a TV session, so you're not going to have a lot of time. Okay, I will set it up. Now, as far as the KVD GA to Soyuz to electrical control, it's closed now. We're going to give you a go additionally. This is after the thermal control modes are complete and the hooks are
and this is Mission Control Korolyov. As we await the start of the news conference momentarily, we can now confirm hooks and latches are closed on both sides of the docking interface, and a hard mate has been established between the Soyuz TMA-8 and the Zarya module. Now let's switch to our post-docking news conference here at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov.
With station air. Okay. You can give me a go on SG2. Right. Vitaly Borisenko is going to be doing that. He is here to relieve me because we're handing over right now in Moscow. That's all I had. Good afternoon or morning, Valery. Good morning. That's all I had, Valery. I am completing my shift at this stage, and that's it for me. Good luck because you're going to have a difficult day today. Thank you, Nikolai. Have a good rest. Thank you, and good luck, guys, until we talk to you again.
Yes. Отвечаем ССВП.
This is Mission Control Korolyov. Having just completed the post-docking news conference, Russian, American, and Brazilian officials, the NASA delegation led by Bill Gerstenmaier, the Associate Administrator for Space Operations, and Kirk Shireman, the Deputy ISS Program Manager, in attendance here, along with a host of dignitaries, having watched the Soyuz TMA-8 successfully dock to the International Space Station at 10:19 p.m. Central Time on Friday night, 8:19 a.m. Moscow time here at the Russian Mission Control Center on a Saturday morning. Since we left for the coverage of that post-docking news conference, we did receive confirmation that hooks and latches were closed on both sides of the docking interface between the Soyuz's docking probe and the docking port on the Earth-facing side of the Zarya module, to which Pavel Vinogradov, the Expedition 13 commander, flight engineer and NASA science officer Jeff Williams, and Brazilian Space Agency astronaut Marcus Pontes arrived, again at 8:19 a.m. Moscow time, about 46 minutes ago. At the moment, Vinogradov on the Soyuz side of the docking interface and Valery Tokarev, the Expedition 12 flight engineer, on the Zarya side of the docking interface are conducting leak checks. This will take a while to ensure that there is a tight seal, good integrity on both sides of the docking interface. Once that's complete, the crews will be given the go to proceed with the opening of the hatches, enabling Bill MacArthur, the Expedition 12 commander, and flight engineer Valery Tokarev to receive their first visitors since they were launched 182 days ago and arrived on the station 180 days ago, back on October 3rd. We are expecting that the hatch opening is going to be carried through U.S. Ku-band communications systems rather than the traditional Russian ground station systems. That would imply that the hatch opening might be delayed just a few minutes, almost until the top of the hour. We are expecting to reacquire a Ku-band communication signal through the tracking and data relay satellite system at about 11:58 p.m. Central Time, 12:58 a.m. Eastern Time. We'll stand by for further information on that, but we do believe that the hatch opening and welcoming ceremony between the two crews will take place over U.S. communications assets, meaning the tracking and data relay satellite system. Meanwhile, in the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, the team of flight controllers that worked in concert with their Russian counterparts here in the Russian Mission Control Center continue on console at this hour. This team led by Flight Director Sally Davis on the right side of your screen, joined on the left side of your screen by spacecraft communicator Hal Getzelman, who has been talking to the station crew, MacArthur and Tokarev, from time to time throughout the course of the evening. Seated on the far left of your picture in the white shirt to Getzelman's right is spacecraft communicator Kevin Ford, who is coming on console at this hour, astronaut Kevin Ford. A shift handover will be getting underway a short time from now. Just out of the field of view on the right side of your screen is the oncoming Orbit 1 flight director, Brian Smith, who will be presiding over the team of flight controllers that will pull the graveyard shift at the Mission Control Center in Houston. A busy day of activities lies ahead for the two crews following the hatch opening and the greeting between one another. Almost immediately after the crews greet one another, the transfer of cargo from the Soyuz TMA-8, which just arrived at the International Space Station, will take place as the two crews pull in the cargo carried aloft in the Soyuz into the International Space Station. That will include some additional clothing for the Expedition 12 crew and items that will get the Expedition 13 increment underway. The Soyuz systems will be deactivated, after which a safety briefing will be conducted by the Expedition 12 crew, MacArthur and Tokarev, as they familiarize the new crew, Vinogradov, Williams, and Pontes, with the systems and emergency evacuation routes should that become necessary. That is a standard safety briefing that occurs shortly after the hatches are opened to ensure that the newly arrived crew has the benefit of an early orientation with station systems and the procedures upon which the two crews would retreat to the Soyuz and the station if required in the unlikely event of a spacecraft emergency. The scaphandra suits, the launch and entry suits that are worn by the Soyuz crew for launch and docking and entry, will be dried out. Marcus Pontes, who is flying under a commercial agreement between the Brazilian Space Agency and the Russian Federal Space Agency called Roscosmos, his experiments will be activated. Those experiments were carried aloft recently on the Progress 20 cargo ship that arrived at the International Space Station a few weeks ago and were set up by MacArthur and Tokarev in advance of Pontes' arrival. Pontes will also move his custom-made Soyuz seatliner from the Soyuz TMA-8 over to the Soyuz TMA-7 spacecraft that is docked to the aft docking port of the Zvezda service module. That custom-made seatliner will be placed in the right seat of the Soyuz TMA-7, awaiting Pontes, MacArthur, and Tokarev to undock from the station on the night of April 8th U.S. time and the early morning hours of April 9th Kazakhstan time, as MacArthur, Tokarev, and Pontes head home for a landing on the steppes of Kazakhstan to wrap up for what MacArthur and Tokarev will be a half year in space, for Pontes 10 days in orbit.
Houston Station, Space Ground 1.
Go ahead, Bill.
Al, I'm not going to remove the ICT interface cable. Therefore, I'm going to go ahead and put Step 8 in work on the Russian segment video signal routing.
Copy, step 8.
Bill MacArthur in the process of routing the video equipment over to the Russian segment of the International Space Station that will provide the views of the hatch opening and the greetings between the two crews. That is expected about 45 minutes from now. The International Space Station now approaching the west coast of South America, flying over the Andes Mountains at an altitude of 220 statute miles, crossing the central portion of South America from southwest to northeast, soon to cross the equator and back out over the Atlantic Ocean. Again, there was a very smooth docking for Pavel Vinogradov, an automated docking, a hands-off docking that enabled the Soyuz TMA-8 to move in for its link up to the Zarya module. You're looking at a replay from video that was taken from the Soyuz spacecraft, the external camera on the Soyuz, as the two spacecraft passed over China, the docking occurring at 10:19 p.m. Central Time, 8:19 a.m. Moscow time on Saturday morning, as the two craft flew over China near the Russian, Kazakh, and Mongolian borders. Moving in at a rate of about 1/10 of a meter per second, precise approach rate. There were no issues associated with the approach for docking. It went smooth as glass as Vinogradov and his crewmates, Jeff Williams and Marcus Pontes, arrived at the International Space Station. And here you see the final few feet and the contact and capture right there. Hooks and latches began to engage one another as soon as the relative motion between the two vehicles was allowed to dampen out. A hard mate occurred about 12 minutes after docking, as confirmation was received by the visiting vehicle officer in the flight control room at the Johnson Space Center in the International Space Station flight control room that hooks and latches had indeed engaged to form a hard mate between the two craft. So with the docking having been accomplished, another view of that approach for docking was captured through the external camera on the port truss of the International Space Station as the Soyuz moved in with its thrusters firing. You can see this view again from the P-1 outboard camera on the port truss structure of the complex as Vinogradov and his crewmates moved in the final few feet for docking. You'll see that link up just a moment from now. And there it is as the TMA-8 arrived at the Zarya module for its docking, which occurred about 54 minutes ago. Again, leak checks are underway on either side of the docking interface as plans are underway to open up the hatches between the two vehicles and for the two crews to greet one another. We are expecting the hatch opening to occur through the U.S. KU-band communication system through the tracking and data relay satellite system that NASA employs for high data rate telemetry and television downlink from orbiting spacecraft. We expect to come into range of the KU-band communication system at about 58 minutes after the hour, at which time the two crews will have an opportunity to greet one another, say a few words, receive congratulatory calls from NASA dignitaries as well as Russian and Brazilian officials gathered here at the Russian Mission Control Center before pressing on with a very long workday to set up operations between the two crews that will ultimately lead to the start of a 12-hour extended sleep period just after noon Central Time on Saturday, 10:30 p.m. Moscow time, Saturday night.
We're with you on one.
Yeah, Hal, I should be a little more specific. I'm doing 8.2, and I have not powered off the robotics workstation.
8.2 and not powered off the robotics workstation.
Right, I'm doing 8.2 and not 8.1.
Copy.
is Mission Control Koryoff. Again, just to recap, new residents have arrived at the International Space Station. Expedition 13 Commander Pavel Vinogradov, Flight Engineer and NASA Science Officer Jeff Williams, and Brazilian astronaut Marcus Pontes docked to the earthward-facing docking port of the Zarya module on the Russian segment of the International Outpost at 10:19 p.m. Central Time on Friday night, 8:19 a.m. Moscow time Saturday morning. Hooks and latches engaged to form a hard mate between the two vehicles about 12 minutes ago. The two crews on either side of the docking interface are going through a long checklist of procedures to ensure that there is a tight seal, good integrity in the small vestibule or passageway leading from the Soyuz into the Zarya module itself. We are expecting the hatch opening and greetings between the two crews to take place about 35 to 40 minutes from now. We are expecting that to occur on the U.S. Ku-band communication system, and so we will be awaiting that event that brings the two crews together and brings for Expedition 12 Commander Bill MacArthur and his flight engineer Valery Tokarev their first visitors since they were launched 6 months ago. They are in the home stretch of their half-year mission. Their 182nd day in space today, their 180th day on board the International Space Station. We will resume coverage on NASA TV about 12 minutes from now at the bottom of the hour and pick it up and continue through the hatch opening and the welcoming ceremony and the congratulatory calls for the 5 crew members on board the International Space Station. So until we resume coverage at 11:30 p.m. Central Time, 12:30 a.m. Eastern Time, and 9:30 a.m. on Saturday morning in Moscow, for now, this is Mission Control Koryoff.